Welcome, everyone. Well, we're so thrilled to have you join us for Revel 11 for a very special conversation today. I just want to start by saying that I've watched Jessica and her brothers over the years grow um, just an amazing journey around tapping. And what I found so profound about the book is that we all have a superpower we didn't know we have. And I want to talk about that a little bit that, this superpower that is within us is something that can instantly dial down anxiety, quiet our spiral overthinking, which I know we all have, and help us actually calm our own bodies down. So it turns out we already have this superpower. It's right here. And we can use it for EFT, which is Emotional Freedom Technique. And it's a tool that we can use 24/7, day or night. And again, it's right here, and we're going to hear all about it. So, Jessica Ortner is a best-selling author, New York Times best-selling author, and co-founder of the Tapping Solution. She is author of this new fabulous book called Rewired, the breakthrough tapping method to stop overthinking, calm your body, and finally feel at ease. And who doesn't want that? I do. I want it all the time, Jessica. Um, I'm so thrilled to welcome her today to tell us more about how to use EFT and something that has been with us and within us our whole lives, and we haven't known about it until just right now. Welcome, Jessica.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. And hello, everybody.
Welcome. So, if people haven't heard of tapping, can you just kind of tell us, like, what are the basics of it? And why do you call it the superpower we never had? We never
Yeah.
knew we had.
So if anyone expects me to tap dance, I'm sorry to disappoint you. We call it tapping because what we're doing is we're using fingers to stimulate acupressure points with a light tap. It's also called EFT, which is these are the 9 points. And what's so powerful about this method is that once you know how to do this, once you know these 9 points, you could use it anytime before a meeting, when you're having trouble falling asleep, if you get into a car accident and you're feeling panicked, to be able to speak to the police officer. It's I keep hearing these stories. We get stories all the time about these moments that people can use it, and that's what makes me the most excited because you don't need a practitioner or a person or a special circumstance in order to use this. And it really is our superpower because of how accessible it is. Oftentimes we learn techniques, but it's dependent on someone else. This is something that you could do yourself, and it's incredibly empowering.
Okay, so let's step back for a minute in time. And how did you initially find out about it?
Yes. Well, I found out about it because I was very sick. I had this cold that just was not going away. And I was just having a really difficult chapter in my life where I was working really hard. I was reading all the self-help books. I felt like I was doing everything right and nothing was going my way. And I felt really discouraged. And during that time, one evening when I was lying sick in bed, my brother comes over. You know, we're a close family. He lets himself in, goes to my room. What's wrong? I feel sick. I've been feeling sick for so long. And he goes, I've learned this tapping thing. Why don't we try it together? And I'm like, I don't know. He's like, let's just try it. So he starts to explain this to me and does a horrible job explaining it to me because he's also very new to the concept and you don't put that much care into explaining something to a sibling. So
And
he
where
just
did
was
he
like,
learn it from,
he
Jessica?
learned it from Tony Robbins. He
Okay.
saw Tony Robbins mention it on stage because Tony Robbins said that he personally found it really helpful. It wasn't that Tony Robbins was like the expert who was teaching it. It was really this moment where he just kind of let it slip, just shared, like, I really like this technique, shared it very quickly. But that piqued his interest in order to look online and learn more. So I do remember he said, I learned it online, which gave me less credibility, like just something he read online. That's basically all I knew in that moment. And so he instructed me to start tapping on these certain meridian points. And there was a moment that I'm tapping on my head and I stop and I look at him and I say, Nick, if this is a prank, I will murder you because I have two older brothers. I have been the
It's so
victim
weird, right?
of
You're
so many
tapping.
pranks. Yes, suddenly you're tapping on the top of the head. I'm already not feeling great. I'm like, you better not be joking. And he goes, no, 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 please, I promise you that I'm not pranking you. Just give this a try. And so I started tapping, and I noticed just by stimulating the points, I felt my body begin to settle. I felt more centered. I felt more calm. And then something unexpected happened. I looked at him and I said, I don't want to get better. He goes, what do you mean? What do you mean you want to get better? And I said to him, I have been trying so hard. And if I'm not pushing myself, I'm drowning in guilt. Being sick is the only way I can take a break without
Mm,
feeling
that
horrible
just
about
breaks my
it.
heart. Yeah. That's a tough place to be.
And I was sick. And it wasn't that I went outside looking for a virus. It wasn't that I said to myself consciously, I'm going to get sick, but my body was worn down. And that was my way of escaping. And that thought was not a conscious thought until that moment. Until I really relaxed with the tapping, was I able to see something that was underlying. And so he said, okay, let's switch our focus. Let's focus on that. And so I started focusing and giving a voice to the disappointment that I felt, this feeling of doing everything right and it not going my way, and the sense of unfairness. And so through these tears of frustration, I began to tap on these points. And again, I had that same experience where I felt a physical shift. So it wasn't just in my head, it wasn't a mental reframe, it was a physical change. And I could take a deep breath in. And I remember saying to him, my sinuses are clear, and I just felt so much better. And
That's
what
amazing.
surprised me the most was the physical change, because when you live with anxiety, and I've lived with it, I had lived with it for so many years beyond that moment. I mean, since I was a child, dealt with anxiety. When you release some of that anxiety, you start to realize how heavy it was. Some of us live with anxiety so much, we actually don't notice how heavy it is until we let it go. And it's almost like the moment you take off a really heavy backpack and you're just kind of finding your balance again. That's what the experience was for me in that moment.
And it was so quick. I mean, that's what's so astonishing about tapping is that it's that your body reacts so quickly, right? I mean,
It
it
was
happened within
probably 30 minutes total, maybe less
amazing.
as we talked about it. Hmm.
hmm So your brother heard about it from Tony Robbins, but what is the history of tapping? Can you explain that and tell us like the very beginning stages because I think it's such an interesting story.
Yeah. So it started with a therapist called Dr. Roger Callahan, and he did traditional CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, the standard, very standard practice. And he had been working with this woman named Mary, who had this awful water phobia. This meant that she was scared of the shower, bathtubs, a sink full of water, pools and oceans, forget about it. She could not even look at them from a distance without beginning to feel the anxiety rising in her body. So you can imagine having such a strong phobia to water, it really impacts the quality of your life and what you're able to do. So she was motivated to get better. So she sought help from a therapist. And she had been working with Dr. Callahan for over 2 years. He had a private practice in a home office, and it just wasn't budging. At that time, Roger Callahan on his own, Dr. Callahan was studying acupressure points and kinesiology. And one of the things that piqued his interest was that when Mary would talk about this water phobia, it always started in one place, which is her stomach. So it wasn't that it was in her head, but sometimes it was the physical feeling would come before she even had a conscious thought around it. And so what he began to do is to stimulate the stomach meridian by tapping underneath the eye. So he combined what he was doing with cognitive behavioral therapy, but now he was stimulating this acupressure point that connects to her stomach. And by doing that, she had an incredible transformation. And only using one point, which is incredible, but it's really really what took this whole thing off is her having this experience. After that, she was able to walk to the back. She could never walk to the back of his house because he had a swimming pool. She was able to look at the
Wow.
swimming pool. 2 days later, they decided to test it again, to go to the ocean and to be in front of the ocean. She was able to put her feet in the sand and look at the water for the first time
That's
in so long. And then
unbelievable.
after that, she was on, I found this old clip of her on a TV show talking about it. So that's really how it started with Dr. Roger Callahan. And he started training people, but only therapists. And, this is the moment of something that's new where you're experimenting, where you're figuring out, okay, what are the points connected to different emotions? How can we use this? Then another gentleman came who studied under Dr. Callahan called Gary Craig. He was a Stanford engineer. And he saw that a lot of times we would use very similar points. And so he had this hypothesis. What if we focus on these 9 common points that people use often that are easy to remember and easy to do yourself? And so that's what started EFT. And that began to expand. So we learned it as well. And back in those days, it was always, you always worked with a practitioner. You worked with someone else who would lead you
That was
through
like
it.
20 years ago, right?
Yes, maybe more. I would say about 25, 30 years ago. We started this 20 years ago. We came across this, and then we began to think, well, people are having this experience with a practitioner. What if there was an audio? What if you could play an audio because you have anxiety, because you have fear of flying, because you have a looping thought, which helps your mind focus on that anxiety? And we'll talk a little bit about how tapping works, so this will make more sense. So we started creating these audios called tapping meditations, and we found
Mhm.
people were saying, wow, after 10 minutes, they could feel a physical difference, an emotional difference. And since then, we've gathered a lot of data around that. But that's been, the chapters in the
That's
evolution of this process.
that's amazing. And so you talk a lot about meridians and acupressure points. Can you explain to our audience what are meridians, just so that everyone understands? Like, let's go back to the basics here. What are meridians, and how are they used? And how is it different than acupuncture, for instance?
Yes. So these meridians are energy channels. And now, if you saw our work 20 years ago, what we would have said to you was tapping uses the energy, like helps clear the energy in your body, because we had no words to explain why this was working. We knew it was working, but the understanding of it, all we really had was ancient Chinese acupressure points and how certain meridians, which are these energy lines, relate to different aspects to your body. But in the last 5 to 10 years, there's really been an explosion in the science and the research that's given us a better understanding of exactly what is happening. So these acupressure points are places that have a high concentration of nerve endings. And you have something in your skin called mechanoreceptors. So when you begin to stimulate these points that have these high nerve endings, it sends a signal through your nervous system. And I think it's helpful to explain what the nervous system is, because it is a word that's thrown around a lot. The nervous system consists of your brain, your spinal cord, and your nerve endings. And you think about it as an information highway. Constantly, information is going up and down, including your brain, your spine. So sometimes, a lot of times we used to think back in the day that the brain was the center of everything. There's a shot, I think it's like Men in Black 2, where there's an alien inside somebody's head and they're just like controlling the body. And that's how we used to think the brain was. The brain was like the computer and everything else is just the puppet. But what we've been realizing, what scientists are realizing by studying the nervous system and how the body works, is that it's a two-way communication.
Okay.
So sometimes you can logically know something, but the body doesn't hear you, doesn't listen. It has its own reaction. It's why someone can have a fear of flying, and you can sit with them and you can tell them logically the data of why getting in a car is more dangerous than flying in an airplane, and it doesn't
It
impact the
won't get it.
physical anxiety because it's not a reasoning problem, it's a nervous system problem. And so what we're realizing is that what tapping does is it uses this electrical pulse to send a message to your nervous system of safety. And it directly impacts how our brain reacts to our outside world. And we have seen this in studies. There has been a study using women who had food cravings in this case, Cravings, for those who know, it's very physical. It's not just in your head. You can have a physical craving. And they found that after they tapped on the craving and they lowered their anxiety, they put them back in an MRI scan and their brain was reacting differently to that stimuli of the craving. And they no longer had the physical craving. They felt like they had control. So we have studies showing that it impacts your brain and how your brain reacts. And so the simplest way to describe it is it's a nervous system tool using these tapping points to send that calming signal of safety.
And so all of this is so fascinating, and it can be so impactful to each and every one of us who have these overactive minds that are, looping things or ideas that get stuck in our body that we can now like have this opportunity to tap them out through a lot of the conversations that you have in the book. But before I go talk about that, I want to talk about fight or flight because that is something that you kind of addressed there. But tell us how, so our mind, tapping says to our mind that we're safe. It takes us out of fight or flight. But how does it do that?
Yeah, of
Can you
course.
explain that?
Yeah, so let's explain what fight or flight is. And our nervous system, going back to the nervous system, your nervous system doesn't care about you reaching your goals. It doesn't care about you fulfilling your potential. Your nervous system cares about one thing and one thing only, which is your survival. So you have a part of your brain called the amygdala, and it's constantly searching for danger because it wants to keep you safe. And one of the mechanisms when we feel like there's a threat is the fight or flight response, which is we either fight or we flee. Now, this day and age, that amygdala is being triggered not by a tiger in the woods, but a bad look or an email or a thought at 3 o'clock in the morning. And so, in those moments, we start to have anxiety and we think of, oh no, I'm having this anxiety. What's wrong with me? My thoughts, I feel so stuck. What's happening there is that your body doesn't think you're safe in that moment. It can't tell the difference between you imagining something bad happening and something bad happening. That's the reason why it could be time for bed and you're worrying about something. And even though you are perfectly safe in your bed, you have nothing to fear, your body will begin to have a chemical reaction as if you have to protect yourself with the fight or flight response. And so when we're having a negative thought, tapping also by using our body to send this safety signal because the tapping is calming, it's centering, you're sending a safety signal while thinking about something negative. What that does is it creates what's called a prediction error. Your mind thinks something bad's going to happen. That's why your body's reacting. Now you're tapping and there's a signal of safety, this pulsing of back in my body. I am here. I am safe. And so when you have the negative thought, but your body now has a safety signal, your brain recalibrates and goes, oh, maybe I can relax. Maybe it is safe. Maybe there's nothing threatening. And that prediction error creates that interrupt that helps lower the anxiety.
Wow. So let's hear from our audience right now. If you would put in the chat, what keeps you up at night? What are you worried about? Do you have a lot of anxiety in your life? Why? Can you go ahead and put that into the chat? And then we'll talk about the benefits of tapping, and we're going to actually show you how to do this in a few minutes. But let's just see what our audience has to say. What is keeping you up? I know that um, stress keeps me up all the time from work and money issues and any problems with my child is dealing with keeps me up. Physical pain keeps me up. Wanting to sleep keeps me up from sleeping. That's a good one. So, what else? Inside items outside of my control, money. I don't worry, but I don't sleep well. I am awake every night. I'm sure you've heard a lot of these before, Jessica. Finances. Need diet napping, please. um, Business development stress in a down economy as a business owner. Christina, I can totally relate as another business owner. So it's been a rough couple years with the economy. So many things, Jessica. So what would you say to our audience about all of these things? It's just
Yeah.
crazy. Morning symptoms of diaphragm shaking uncontrollably.
There's two things that create stress in our lives. It's uncertainty and lack of control. I'm going to say that again. Uncertainty
Uncertainty and
and
lack
lack of
of
control
control.
create anxiety. And when it comes to so much of what we're talking about here, it's uncertainty and lack of control. Life is about uncertainty and lack of control. So, what we have to do is find a better relationship to be able to allow ourselves to feel safe before we have the solution, before we found the answers. When we feel threatened, what our mind does is it starts to go into overdrive to think. It's trying to think our way out of these problems. But many of these problems can't be solved at midnight when you're trying to fall asleep. A lot of these problems can't be solved with our own thinking because our child is out of our control. The economy is out of our control. There's so much out of our control. So, what we have to do is communicate with our body to give our body permission to be able to relax, even when we don't have the answers, even when we don't know what's next. And that goes against a lot of our instincts because we want to keep fighting, keep figuring it out. That fight or flight response wants to keep going, going, going. But you can't outthink overthinking. You can't stress your way to a solution. So many of us, we've had experiences where we suddenly get the idea, we get clarity. It's not at midnight when we can't sleep. It tends to be where? When we're on a walk, when we're in the shower. Einstein used to say he would get the best ideas when he was shaving. I don't think it was the shaving cream. It's moments in our days when we're feeling a little more relaxed that the answers come. In order for us to access our resourcefulness, our creativity, and our ability to have that hunch. We can look back in our lives and remember a time where we just felt like doing something that didn't make sense or we wanted to make a call. I really believe that our intuition is guiding us, and it's usually a whisper. And so it's only when we can quiet the anxiety enough to find peace in the moment that we start to get the answers that we're looking for. And that goes against our instinct because our instinct, keep trying, keep figuring it out, keep thinking. So, what we're doing with the tapping is giving ourselves this moment, this permission to say, right now, right here, even with the economy, even with my kid, even with my health, it's safe for me to relax. And when you can relax, that's when you gain that clarity.
Okay, so let's learn how to do this, Jessica.
Yes,
So can you take us through a tapping? Well, talk to us first about each of the different tapping points and then take us through an actual tapping session. That would be
perfect.
lovely. Thank you.
The very first point is the side of the hand. It's underneath the pinky. You're using, two or three fingers to stimulate the point. It doesn't matter what side of the body you tap on because these points are symmetrical. The next point is the eyebrow point, and it's where the hair of your eyebrow begins. You can tap on one side or you can tap on both. It's personal preference. Then we have the side of the eye, and that's right on the bone.
On the bone.
On
So
the
right
bone, yeah.
underneath.
So it's
Okay.
not back in your temples, it's right on the bone.
On the bone. Okay.
Then you have underneath your eye on the bone, underneath the nose, underneath the mouth, the crease between your bottom lip and your chin. You have your collarbone point that if you feel your collarbone on either side, you go down an inch. You can also use your whole hand to tap. Then we have underneath the arm, which is a hand width from your armpit. It tends to be where your bra strap lies. And then we have the top of the head on the crown. Those are the 9 points. So you repeat those 9 points. Let me bring in the psychology part of this because tapping is this beautiful combination of modern psychology and these Chinese acupressure points. When you are tapping on your own, it's really helpful to start. We tend to start with what's called the setup statement. It's something as simple as, even though I feel anxious, I accept how I feel. For many people, this is like, I feel uncomfortable. I don't accept how I feel. But what you're doing is you're releasing the judgment. You're validating your feelings. If I say to you, listen, Joni, like everything's fine. Don't worry about it. Everything's gonna be fine. And you're in a panic, your brain is gonna go, no, it's not. Don't bypass my feelings. You're not being realistic. You don't see what I see. But if you give yourself a moment to acknowledge what you see and say, I accept how I feel, I accept this is hard, it helps you have a real honest conversation with yourself. And as you tap on the rest of the points, you always start by expressing how you're feeling. So it could be as simple as this anxiety, this stress. The words that we're saying out loud, the only reason we're saying them is to help us stay focused. So we're not thinking about the dishwasher, we're not thinking about tomorrow. We're really staying focused on what's the thought that's creating this physical anxiety? What's bothering me? Let me bring it up to tap to create that prediction error, to send that calming signal. Once the intensity of how you're feeling has lowered, now when you say, everything's going to be all right, you got this, it's almost like you can take it in because you've weeded before you planted the seed. Now there's space for that seed to grow. But if you move positive too fast, especially when you're really triggered, you're really anxious, then you'll have a bit more resistance to it. So that is the basic structure, but we'll have an experience together so everyone can do it. How's that sound?
That sounds wonderful.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So what I would like you to do is as I tap, tap where I'm tapping and simply repeat what I'm saying in your own mind. So before we start the tapping, just close your eyes for a moment. We've been focused on anxiety, and I want you to think about anxiety. Where in your life have you felt anxious? Where in your body has that anxiety been living? Is it a heaviness in your chest, a tightness in your stomach, a pain in your back, a cramp in your shoulder? Just notice physically where that anxiety lives. And I'm going to have to stay really general since we have a lot of people here, but let's have a quick experience. So, tapping on the side of the hand, repeat after me, either in your mind or out loud. Even though I'm experiencing this anxiety, I accept how I feel. And let's jump right in. So, eyebrow point, again, we're giving a voice to how we're feeling. So, you could do one hand or both. All this anxiety, side of the eye, all of this uncertainty, under the eye. I've been trying so hard. Under the nose, and I'm so tired. Under the mouth, all of these feelings. Collarbone and the way they live in my body. Under the arm, I acknowledge this heaviness. Top of the head, I acknowledge this anxiety. Back to the eyebrow, even with all these feelings. Side of the eye, I am safe. Under the eye, even before anything changes. Under the nose, I am safe. Under the mouth, I acknowledge this struggle. Collarbone, and I give my body permission to relax. Under the arm, right now and right here, Top of the head, there's nothing to figure out. Eyebrow, it's safe to allow my body to rest. Side of the eye, it's safe to allow my mind to take a break. Under the eye, even though much is uncertain. Under the nose, I am finding my way. Under the mouth, I am finding my way. Collarbone, I am safe. Under the arm, I am enough. Top of the head, it is safe to rest. Take a nice deep breath in as you stop tapping. And exhale. You can move your shoulders a little bit, just tune back into your body and notice how your body feels now before you were noticing the anxiety where it lives. Notice if it's shifted in your bodies, if anything has changed. And that was for many of you your first very quick tapping experience. How is that for you, Joni?
Oh, I do feel different. I mean, it's really interesting to give ourselves that safety message. And I want to know how it has been for you out there in our audience today, if you would share in the chat. I just do feel a sense of calm that I haven't had for some time, and my stomach was hurting, and it's not hurting anymore.
Wow, that's
Okay,
amazing.
so it works. I feel better, feel more at peace. That was wonderful, especially the statement of finding my way. Certainly makes sense. I felt a shift. My eyes feel lighter and open, helpful, and also good to be with others feeling anxiety too. Pain is less in her feet. Really, that's wonderful. I felt a shift. Wow, that's amazing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah.
as I said in the beginning, this is a superpower we didn't know we have. And we've had it all along. And thank you so much for bringing this to our awareness and to share your message with the world, Jessica. It's so meaningful to all of us who need help every day, just to get through, life. And what I want to talk about is that you've seen so much success from tapping, and this is a moment in time where you are getting so many accolades, but actually scientists are looking to you and your brothers about the success of tapping. So will you share with us about your 32 million plays on your app and what that has led to at this moment, because it's so fascinating what's happening with science and scientists really going, wow, this works.
Yes, I would love to share that, and I'll take a quick step back, if I may, because I want to mention one study before I talk about our research,
Okay.
especially when we see someone say, the pain in my feet is less and my eyes feel lighter, and a lot of people will come back and say, I slept better tonight, and so it leaves people thinking, well, how is it lessening the pain in my feet, and how is it helping my sleep, and how's it what we have found, there's been a study that showed that tapping reduces cortisol. This was a study out of Bond University in Australia, and it showed that tapping reduces cortisol by 42% in one session. Cortisol is the stress hormone, and it impacts everything. It impacts our sleep, our metabolism. It impacts brain fog, our cognitive ability. And so when you are able to lower cortisol, lower that stress, it has this cascading effect where suddenly the pain in your back lowers or you sleep better that night. And so we've been so lucky that we've had some great research before us, and we are really seeing this turning point. Some people ask, if the research is so great, how come I don't see this everywhere? How come it's not in every office? And we're really at that tipping point. The research, what people need to understand is that research takes funding. And so when you're a medical company that has a pill, you have so much funding to be able to do the research study on the pill. This is a self-administered free technique that you can follow along in an app, which is at a very low price, but it isn't a big business model. And so I think that's why it took so long to get research, simply because of the funding. But there have been these incredible people who have been in the research field, one being Dr. Peta Stapleton down in Australia at Bond University, who had a personal passion to bring this to the university and convince them to allow her to do it because she saw the results. I'm seeing a real shift now with larger universities being more interested in doing these longer research studies, which is really needed in order for us to continue to expand and to be in more places. And the turning point to that has been the app. So we have an app called the Tapping Solution app. We have over 25 million tapping meditation plays. One of the things that's unique about our app is most apps, you go in and they congratulate you for showing up. It's like, okay, you've showed up 3 days in a row. What we measure though is before and after. So how anxious were you before and how anxious are you after? And we have a 0 to 10 scale. So you don't always have to do it, but if you want to, you can measure how you're feeling before and you can measure how you're feeling after. Well, 18 million times people have decided to measure their before and after in our app. So that gives us 18 million data points. The moment that became more public, that is when Harvard looked our way, Yale looked our way, MIT. And so that has been the biggest transformation. And now we have things in play. We have research studies and we're able to get funding because when researchers feel more confident that something works, they're also
Yes.
more interested in putting their name on some of the first papers. So we've really seen that shift and very grateful to the researchers who are willing to push for this and to find the funding to do this. But there's been 300 published studies. What I think is missing is some of those big universities, and I'm seeing that in the pipeline.
That is so exciting to see the success and that I just want to say the help to all of the us that need this. Like I said before, that there is something accessible to us 24/7 that we didn't know about, and you sharing that makes such a big difference. I do want to go back just one moment about the book and talk us through about the various scenarios. So we did anxiety today, but your book is made up of so many different topics about how, with each individual way to deal with to tap in the story that you tell. Can you tell us more about how that works?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So, as I mentioned before, tapping lowers cortisol, and cortisol really impacts every aspect of our lives. And when we're doing the tapping, we might decide, I always suggest that you focus on what's creating the most attention. So say you're dealing with struggles with sleep, that's where you start. We have a chapter on that. We have a chapter on looping thoughts. We have a chapter on health struggles. And the only way that the tapping differs is to give you examples on what you can focus on. Because when you're saying the words and when you're tapping out loud, what you want to do is get clear on the thought that's creating that physical anxiety, that's creating the sleepless nights, that's creating that tension in your shoulders. And so by reading different stories and different examples, you're going to have those aha moments. You're going to see yourself in somebody else's story. And then at the end of every chapter, there's a tapping meditation that you can follow along. If you buy the book, you also, because I always buy these books, about like meditation, and then it tells you the meditation in the book. And I'm like, I can't read and meditate at the same time. So anyone who buys the book, we also have a link in there to get the audios for all the tapping meditations. Also, the Tapping Solution app, it's a free download. We have a few free in there as well, and then 1,000 with a really affordable membership. And you're able to follow along and get specific on what you're going through. So, the only real difference is being able to get clarity to stay focused on what you're struggling with, what is creating that anxiety, and finding those words to tap.
Wow, so great. And I also think that this is such an amazing time for this book to come out. I mean, there's so many inputs that we have right now with what's going on internationally, with the environment and politics, with friends, with family, and there's just so many data points. And there's no better time to have this tool than right now.
I agree. I agree.
Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah. So if there's one thing that you would like people to take away today from our conversation, what would it be?
I haven't mentioned this directly, but I just feel inspired to share something that impacted my life, which is replacing criticism with curiosity. When we're struggling, we can be really hard on ourselves. So, besides struggling, on top of that, we're dealing with our own judgments about struggling.
Mhm.
And that is really where things start to get very stuck. And if it worked, if criticism really worked, we'd all be a lot further along by now. We'd all be a lot more happier. So I want you to look back and think, have I been hard on myself? And has that strategy worked? And if it hasn't, and you're willing to do something else, replace it with curiosity. Because when we're curious, when we look at what we're struggling with, the way that I started tapping on a cold and suddenly something else came up, that was me allowing myself to be curious, to go, oh wow, there's this other feeling behind this. There's something else underneath this that I can address. And that discovery doesn't become another point of criticism. It becomes a point of awareness and clarity and something that we can focus on.
What a beautiful invitation for all of us. I know that I was just reading some statistics that 95% of our thoughts are subconscious and many of them are negative. 95%.
Wow. Yeah.
Isn't that shocking? I mean, it's not surprising, but 5% we actually use our brain to make positive thoughts. And so we have an incredible opportunity to not be so self-critical. And that is such an incredible gift you just gave all of us. So, oh, someone said, can we take her home with us?
You're so sweet. You almost can because if you download the Tapping Solution app, you'll hear my voice. I write and record everything. So
Well, you have such a beautiful voice, Jessica, and you're such a gift for us today. Thank you so much for joining us in Rebel 11. It's such an honor. And like I said in the beginning, I've been watching your career with your brothers and your message around tapping for many, many years. And it's such an honor to have you here today.
thank you.
So before we let you go, we like to do this lightning round. We call it the Revel 11 lightning round. Are you ready?
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay, so no overthinking.
Okay,
Just let's go with it. One word, two words. If you want to give us a little bit more, are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay, one word for this season of your life.
Mother,
Oh, okay, and I'm going to give a little, you're like, oh, um, something you're releasing,
perfection,
something you're protecting,
my time,
belief you've outgrown,
I'm not good enough,
a boundary that's changed everything for you.
I don't need to make everyone happy,
That's a very good one. What matters less now?
acknowledgments,
What matters more now?
family,
One practice you return to.
tapping.
I love that. A truth you trust more today.
Trust life. God has a greater plan for you.
Something that life has given you.
Family.
And who are you becoming?
more at peace.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So beautiful to get to know you better. Thank you for playing along. Thank you for all of your gifts. The book is Rewired. I highly suggest it. And obviously, you know, and I know now how powerful this tool is. And it's right here. And go buy this book. Thank you
Thank
all for
you.
joining us today. Beautiful. Thanks for sharing your gifts with us, Jessica, and everyone. Have a great day and a great week ahead. If you're here in Seattle, we have an upcoming summer soiree. We hope you'll join us for that in person and many other things you can check out on revel11.com and also on Instagram. Thank you. Have a
Thank you
great day,
so much.
everyone. Thanks.